In this video I'm going to approach the movie Scarface from a political point of view and predict the current political views of the characters and which party they would support in the United States of America. We will also talk about which state the characters look like people from. Let's start right away and you will understand what I mean. Before going to the video, let me say that most of the characters in the movie Scarface are connected to drugs. Some consume, some sell, some transport, some produce. Now, none of the parties in our country support the drug trade anyway. Of course, some parties and groups argue that regulation and legalization of the trade would reduce the illegal trade more effectively. But let's skip all that. We will skip the drug-related policies of the parties and we will make a political analysis of the characters. Alejandro Sosa. He's a Bolivian drug lord. Sosa is the head of a very powerful cartel in Bolivia. He has extensive connections in both the Bolivian government and the US government. This allows him to act with complete impunity. In 1982, the US president was Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party was in power. In those years, he would have supported the Republican Party because it was in power. Today, he will support the current government, the Republican Party and Donald Trump. So you can understand that this man is a businessman and he will support whoever is in power. We can put him right in the center of our political compass. As for what state he looks like a wealthy resident of Florida, a state with a high concentration of Latin Americans. So I'm putting Sosa in the state of Florida. Manny Ribera, also known as Manolo. He is Tony Montana's best friend and companion. Manny is more humane and pragmatic in his personality and behavior than the other characters in the film. Manny was one of the refugees who emigrated from Cuba to the United States to escape the Castro regime. So Manny does not like communism. Unlike Tony, Manny communicates easily with people. His interest in women shows a more hedonistic approach to life. Manny represents a pragmatic, more social structure, away from violence and extremism. In contrast to Tony's capitalist ambitions and individualism, Manny has a more cooperative and balancing profile. In short, he represents a centrist, reformist and more socially open-minded approach, so I think he will support the Democratic Party. On our political compass, we can position the economic axis as slightly left and the social axis as libertarian. As for which state is like the people of the state, I think Manny is like the people in Miami who are Latino, who are energetic, who are outgoing. So I'm putting Manny in the state of Florida. Frank Lopez. An aging Miami-based drug lord, Frank needs loyal comrades to keep his business safe and under control. When he first meets Tony and Manny, he tells Tony, "Call me Frank, the kids on the youth baseball team, even those asshole lawyers call me Frank." And then Frank rejects Tony's $18 million deal with Sosa. Tony says, "We gotta think big, Frank, we're gonna make $75 million. But Frank counts the big guys in the market and says we're not that big and he refuses to think big. As a result, Frank is the character who represents the authoritarian understanding of capitalism. In today's America he would probably support the Republican Party. In our political compass, we can position him on the right and authoritarian line. In terms of what state he's like, I think Frank is more of an old-school mafia guy. I think he's more of a northeastern state guy and Frank represents the old school of the mafia structures of the past. I see Frank Lopez as a well-adjusted and stylish person, especially from a city like New Jersey, where big business dominates, where life is busy and where crime is a big option. So I'm putting Frank in the state of New Jersey. Chi. He was one of Tony's best friends and men during his rise to power. He helped save Tony in the failed drug deal with the Colombians. Chi was with Tony in the money laundering raid. Likewise, Chi was one of the refugees who emigrated from Cuba to the United States to escape the Castro regime. Chi's lifestyle is more focused on individual economic gain and the struggle for survival. He has a realistic rather than idealistic outlook. She is also intolerant of chaos and disorder, which suggests that she would support the rule of a strong and decisive leader. Now, if we look at the Democratic Party, it is characterized by social welfare programs, freedom and individual rights. However, Chi would not support this party as it would be more individualistic and focused on economic interests. As for the Republican Party, economics such as individual success, free market economy and low taxes may conflict with Chi's pragmatic and self-interested lifestyle. She is more likely to support the Republican Party. On our political compass, we can position it as automation and the right. In terms of what state he looks like, Chi's physical appearance and the way he speaks is generally Latino. She seems to be a part of the multicultural Latin American part of Miami. Because like most of the characters in the movie, she is a Cuban immigrant. So I'm adding Chi to the state of Florida. Hector, nicknamed the Frog, is a Colombian cocaine dealer. He and 3 Colombian gang members were going to con Tony and chainsaw him and Angel Fernandez. Of course, they chainsawed Angel anyway. Economically, Hector prioritizes his individual interests. However, these interests are not pursued in accordance with the laws of the free market economy or the capitalist order, but through crime. Far from collectivism, he is completely focused on increasing his own power. This brings him closer to a position of the economic right. Hector is like an agent of chaos. He does not follow the rules himself, nor does he expect others to. However, his methods based on violence and fear show that he does not care about order and peace in society. Although he appears to be socially compatible with authoritarian structures, in fact he has an anarchic tendency to disrupt order even for his own interests. I think that Hector would support the Libertarian Party, but I also think that he would only support it to the extent that it suited his interests, rather than out of true conviction. On our political compass we can place Hector somewhere between the economic right and the social authoritarian and anarchic tendencies. So what state does he look like? I say Texas. We add Hector to the state of Texas. Marta. He is part of a Colombian cocaine dealing gang. He is Hector's bodyguard and supposed co-worker. He waited outside the bathroom door with his gun to prevent Tony and Angel from escaping. She then shot Manny when he came in. Given the environment in which Marta works, rather than her character, there is a sense of distance from the state or an emphasis on individual freedom in the criminal world. This is in line with the Libertarian Party's policies in defense of individual freedom. In conclusion, given Marta's general appearance and function, I think she would support the Libertarian Party. We can place her in an economic right and social authoritarian position on our political compass. As for which state I am likening her to, I again place our character Marta in the state of Texas. Emilio Rebenga. He is the man Tony Montana finished off in the camp, a man who was already one of the most trusted members of Fidel Castro's inner circle. After the Cuban Revolution, Castro began to doubt Rebenga's loyalty, so he sent him to the shores of America with thousands of Cuban immigrants, some of Cuba's most violent and deadly criminals. From there he was placed in a camp. Anyway, he was a communist, but I don't know if he would still be a communist after what Castro did to him, but I would take him as a communist. In the US, I think he would support the Communist Party USA, and in our political compass, we can position him as economic left and social authoritarian. If we think about which state we could place him in, if he supports Rebenga's political background and power-based regionalism, we could place him in one of New York's Latino neighborhoods, especially in New York State where he could connect with Cuban or other Caribbean immigrants. Gina Montana. She is Tony Montana's younger sister. Before Tony came to visit her home, Gina attended community college and worked part-time in a beauty parlor. And Gina had her own needs and existence, a desire for individual freedom, romance, and to some extent a desire to make her own way in life. Gina was a freedom-seeking character. Despite Tony's overbearing attitudes, she exercised her own judgment and pursued romantic pursuits. This desire shows that she had more socially liberal tendencies, and Gina would defend her individual freedom and privacy against Tony. This shows that Gina can stand against authoritarian approaches and support individual values. In conclusion, Gina's associations between individual freedoms and social rights suggest that she might be close to the Democratic Party. On our political compass, we can place her economically center-healthy and socially libertarian. When we think about which state we would liken her to, given Gina's interest in luxury and social circles, areas like Los Angeles would fit her personality. Also, Gina's freedom-loving nature fits well with California's more relaxed and libertarian lifestyle. So we are relocating Gina to the state of California. Georgia Montana. She is the mother of Tony and Gina. After Tony went to prison, she took Gina and left Cuba for Miami. Since then she has always rejected her son. One day when Tony came home, she refused his money and his help and said the following words: "Every day we read in the newspapers about the murders committed by animals like you. Cubans like you are a disgrace to our people. We come here and work hard to earn money and send our children to school." There is actually a lot of analysis to be drawn even from this. She is a woman who works to earn an honest living, who adheres to traditional values. Tony's steadfast attitude in the face of being in the world of crime reveals his commitment to the law and moral values. She sympathized with the Democratic Party because of its defense of the rights of the working class and its policies that created opportunities for immigrants, and she supported its policies of social justice and equal opportunity. On our political compass, we can place it economically center-left and socially authoritarian. In terms of which state she resembles, Tony's mother is a common figure, especially in communities of Cuban and Puerto Rican descent. We can add her to the state of New York as a woman who is very loyal to her family, respects traditional values and acts with the motive of protecting her children. Bernstein. He's a corrupt cop. He is a detective of the Narcotics Bureau of the Miami Police Department. We first see him in the movie at the Babylon Club. He was there trying to extort money from Tony. Of course, Tony then ends the lives of Frank and Mel Bernstein on the same day. Anyway, as a cop, he uses corruption and order for his own benefit. He wants to maintain a structure in society that oppresses the lower classes and where justice is only for the powerful. This puts him in a position of the authoritarian right. Mel Bernstein stands on the side of the powerful, perpetuates inequalities in society and uses corruption as a tool for his own interests. It is more important for him that the existing order works in harmony with the system than that society seeks change and justice. As a result, he supported the Republican Party. On our political compass, we can position it as economic right and social authoritarian. Now let's think about which state he resembles. Mel Bernstein is a figure who reflects the corrupt nature of some police circles in Los Angeles. In the big cities in California, there was a criminal environment in which the drug trade was intertwined with the police and corrupt officials. I liken Mel Bernstein to a police officer in Los Angeles with such criminal connections. Angel Fernandez. He is one of Tony's closest friends, as well as Chi and Manny. Together with Tony and Manny, he finished off Emilio Rebenga. He was dismembered by Hector, the Toad, with a chainsaw. Angel Fernandez is a character who takes part in Tony's corrupt dealings and benefits from this scheme. It is possible that Fernandez adopts an economic right stance. That is, he takes part in the existing capitalist order, siding with the powerful and taking advantage of the existing order. Fernandez has no aim to change the social or societal order. As a character who respects authority and follows the orders of the powerful, he has social authoritarian tendencies. However, these tendencies are only related to the fact that he is more interested in maintaining the existing order than in social change. In short, Fernandez supported the Republican Party. In our political compass, we can position her as economic right and social authoritarian. In terms of which state he resembled, in big cities like Houston, there was a strong Latino immigrant presence and the drug trade was very important. Angel's structure could find its place in the criminal world in Texas. Nick, nicknamed Pig, was one of Tony's men. Even though Tony didn't treat him well and nicknamed him Pig because of his obesity, Nick remained loyal to Tony and stood his ground during the final attack on the mansion. Nick's character doesn't really have much to do in the movie. The same arguments I made for Angel Fernandez apply to Nick. Nick supported the Republican Party, and on our political compass he would be on the economic right and social authoritarian position. As for which state he resembles, Chicago has a history of crime where tough and rough personalities like Nick can exist. Chicago was the center of organized crime in the 20th century and is still known for its street gangs. So I'm putting Nick in the state of Illinois. Omar Suarez. He is Frank Lopez's right-hand man and a middleman in the drug trade. Omar acted not only to protect Frank Lopez's interests but also his own. In Omar and Tony's meeting with Sosa, Omar was more status quo and risk-averse than Tony's aggressive plans. In other words, he wanted to preserve the status quo. This suggests that he is economically right-leaning. Omar does not seek to change the overall structure of society and prefers to preserve the existing order. This suggests that he is socially centrist or slightly authoritarian. In addition, Omar's choice to side with powerful figures and his aversion to risk reveals that he has a status quo political stance. In short, she would support the Republican Party in American politics due to her power-oriented approach and status quo stance. In our political compass, we can position him on the economic right and social centrist or slightly authoritarian position. As for which state he resembles, the city of Philadelphia is one of the historically important centers of organized crime. It can be a favorable environment for characters like Omar who are intermediaries but not direct leaders. The drug and money laundering operations in the city provide a criminal infrastructure that suits Omar's style. That's why we're adding Omar to the state of Pennsylvania. Elvira Hancock. There's no one who doesn't remember this amazing woman. She appears in the movie as Frank Lopez's wife, the woman Tony falls in love with at first sight. When Tony is dancing with Elvira, he tries to talk to her, but Elvira doesn't care about Tony at all, and then she tells Tony that she doesn't need another friend, especially not one who just got off a banana can. Of course, Tony gets angry at these words and says something that offends her. Elvira says that even if I were blind and horny, I would never fuck you. I must add that Elvira was telling the truth. As much as Tony wanted to have children, they didn't. That doesn't mean they didn't have something, but Elvira didn't have children with Tony. Anyway, back to the point. Elvira has an economic profile that advocates individualism and capitalist values. Her fondness for luxury and the pursuit of happiness associated with wealth places her on the economic right. On social issues, Elvira is not overtly progressive. but she does have a liberal attitude of respect for individual rights. She takes a more egalitarian approach to male-female relations and does not embrace traditional roles. This shows that she has a generally apolitical attitude and is not actively engaged with the political system. In conclusion, the center-left economic policies of the Democratic Party and its emphasis on individual freedoms may be compatible with Elvira's social attitudes. In our political compass, we can position her economically to the right and socially in the center or slightly to the left. She has already said in the movie which state she resembles. When she dances with Tony, she says she's from Baltimore. She is already beautiful like Baltimore. We're adding her to the state of Maryland. Alberto. Alberto, nicknamed the Shadow, is one of Sosa's professional men. Alberto recognized Omar Suarez in New York City and found out that he was an informant who was sending valuable associates of Sosa's to prison for life and took him out. Alberto then traveled to New York City on a mission with Tony, where he was finished off by Tony. Alberto's priority is to fulfill his job and follow Sosa's instructions. This shows that he has a pragmatist nature and is focused on personal gain or survival. In Alberto's plan to plant a bomb in a civilian car, it did not matter to him that it could end the lives of innocent children. This shows his disregard for moral boundaries. The fact that Alberto is a professional focused on individual gain and loyalty leads him to take an economically right-leaning stance. Alberto's allegiance to powerful leader figures and his habit of following orders without discussion suggests that he has a socially authoritarian stance. He has a personality profile that would be more comfortable in authoritarian regimes. Alberto displays a pragmatist attitude rather than ideological commitment. Therefore, his political stance can be flexible and changeable according to the situation. I think Alberto would support the Republican Party because of its economic right leanings and its allegiance to authoritarian leaders. We can place it on our political compass in a position of economic right and social authoritarianism. If we choose a state for Alberto, I liken him to the Arizona lizard, so we add him to the state of Arizona. George Sheffield. He is Tony Montana's lawyer. He appears in the movie after Tony is arrested by an undercover cop while laundering money. Sheffield embraces the values of individual enrichment and success offered by the capitalist system. He prioritizes financial gain and private property. This indicates that he is close to the economic right. Although he does not advocate freedom or social equality, he does not want to interfere in the personal choices of individuals. Sheffield is focused on benefiting from the functioning of the system. He wants to preserve the existing order and maximize his own interests within it, rather than from a reformist or revolutionary perspective. As a result, he supports the Republican Party because of its economically right-wing policies and its defense of the capitalist system. In our political compass, we can place it somewhere between the economic right and the social center. In terms of which state we would place it, we could add New York State, which has the largest and most dynamic legal market in the country. Ernie. He worked as security and bodyguard for Frank Lopez. Later, after Manny and Tony finished off Frank and Mel, Tony did nothing to him and offered him the same job. He remained loyal to Tony until the attack on Tony's mansion. Ernie is one of Tony's men and doesn't have much to do in the movie. My views on Angel Fernandez and Nick apply to Ernie as well. He was a supporter of the Republican Party and our political compass was economic right and social authoritarian. In terms of which state he resembles, the state of Connecticut is not usually directly associated with organized crime, but it can serve as a base for smaller operations compared to large criminal organizations. Ernie's calm and quiet nature might find a fitting place in a less chaotic state like Connecticut. Matos Gutierrez. Tony, the man he gave up on because he had a wife and children with him. Matos Gutierrez is a journalist who learned the inner workings of Sosa's organization. He was scheduled to testify at the United Nations building in New York. Sosa makes a deal to help Tony with his money laundering case. In exchange, Tony would take down Gutierrez. Gutierrez is likely to support economic policies that favor the disadvantaged in society. This is because he understands that the mafia often recruits from the poor and desperate. Gutierrez prioritizes values such as freedom of expression, individual rights, and government accountability. This pushes him towards a socially libertarian position against authoritarian policies. He used to support the Democratic Party because of its policies in favor of social benefits, the elimination of economic inequalities, greater emphasis on a free press, and the protection of individual rights. In our political compass, we can place it economically center-left, socially libertarian. In terms of which state to place them in, I choose California because it has the most journalists. Jerry. He's a corrupt banker who helps Tony launder his dirty money. I won't go into too much detail. My views on Mel Bernstein and George Sheffield apply to Jerry. He supported the Republican Party. On our political compass, we can place him somewhere between the economic right and social authoritarianism. As for what state it looks like, I would place it in Nevada, where Jerry can make complex financial transactions related to the criminal underworld of Las Vegas. Tony Montana. Yes, now we come to our protagonist. I'm not giving you a summary because even if we lose our memory, we won't forget this guy. Tony is a man of strong ambition and ego, and Tony values loyalty and honor, but he interprets these concepts from his own perspective. He lives by his own rules and harshly punishes those who break them. He does not succumb to physical and psychological threats. He prefers to solve problems by force. This makes him an authoritarian figure. Tony is strongly attached to his family. He may go to extremes to protect them. Tony defends his freedom and independence. But this is about individual freedom rather than social freedom. He tries to control his own destiny. Turning now to his political leanings, Tony sees wealth and riches as personal achievement. He supports free market economy and individual success, but he doesn't care about doing it legally. Although he has an authoritarian personality, he is a figure who rebels against the oppression of the system. This is an aspect that contradicts his social authoritarianism. As a result, he supported the Republican Party because of its policies in favor of economic freedom and low taxes. In our political compass, we can place him somewhere between economic right and social authoritarianism. I'd like you to decide which state it resembles. Write in the comments. If you like the video, it would motivate me a lot if you like the video. You can also specify in the comments for the political analysis of the movies you want. Of course, you can subscribe to my channel to be informed about those videos. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.